This is Jax Atlantis, and I'm bringing you another episode of the Not So Minor Aspect series, and in this particular case, we're focusing on the 40-degree novile. So for the 40-degree novile, we have to remember that this comes before the semi-square at 45 degrees, and it comes after the semi-sextile at 30 degrees. So at the semi-sextile, that's where we hit the 30-degree mark, and of course we enter the Taurus archetype. So if you imagine that the conjunction starts at 0 degrees Aries, once we're getting to the 30-degree mark, we're entering the Taurus archetype. And of course with Taurus, they have an incredibly powerful discernment and the ability to start discriminating between what is pyrite in their life and what is gold, what will be able to handle the heat and meld into a new shape, and what will be brittle and breakable and of low value and not very rare. So that the entry level that semi-sextile brings us to is a place in which we have to start deciding very clearly, I know deep down that this journey in the first 30 degrees felt so formless, but now as I move towards the novile at 40 degrees, things are actually taking shape. And in order for them to take shape, it requires that we let some things go, and it requires that we discern what is and is not valuable. And of course, without even getting into the waxing and waning aspects, the 40-degree novile that we face at the waning aspect before we reach a new conjunction is a time in which the lack of discernment in that moment could be so crucial that it could actually, basically dismantle what we've experienced through the entire journey so far before we've reached the next conjunction. So you may have gone through the first novile and started to recognize some ways in which you needed to discern and start making some different choices. And then as you've gone all the way around the wheel and you're reaching that last novile, you might have a moment where you're called to discern something that is not easy. It's not an easy choice to make, and it's incredibly difficult to kind of emotionally deal with it. But if you get to that 40-degree novile right before you reach the new conjunction, and then you don't make that discernment choice, you don't make the hard choice, you try and opt out of it, you try and take the easy road, then you can accidentally dismantle yourself and bring yourself right back to a comfortable place before the journey began in the first place, and perpetually keeping yourself in that first 30 degrees in sort of the formless excitement of starting something new, but never, of course, progressing into something more. And so that's why the novile is incredibly important. And then, of course, once the novile turns into the semi-square, then that's the point at which we start to give ourselves all these restrictions to make our journey real, which is also within Taurus. So thank you guys for tuning into this episode, and next we'll be going over some examples. This is Jax, and today we're going to be looking at another episode of the Not So Minor Aspect series. Today we're focused on the novile part 2. We're looking a little bit deeper into the novile, and we talked the last time about how it's a 40-degree angle, and how what happens in this angle is we tend to have a very subtle internal realization in a way in which what we're doing and who we are start to lean towards each other. They start to become one. We start to look at things a little bit closer. We start to recognize the truth about different situations. And as we talked about as well, the waxing novile versus the waning novile is really important, because the waxing novile, the recognition of what it is that we need to start setting aside and what we need to start aligning ourselves with, is incredibly important to start the journey and to really get in there at the beginning and to start actually taking some formation. But the waning novile is the part at which we're basically at the very end of the process. We're getting so close to the end and a new beginning, and then you basically are going to have that moment to make a decision, and if we don't really make that decision, it's going to really hurt us. So for example, we can look at September 1st and how we're going to start September. So we've got the Sun in Virgo. It's going to be noviling Venus in Libra, and what we're going to be looking at with this aspect is the ways in which our personal improvement, the way in which we take on a new hobby, we take on a new skill, we do that first push-up, we take that first walk, we take that first Spanish class, whatever the project or self-improvement, whatever the thing is that we're adding to our routine, whatever way in which we're trying to work on perfecting ourselves or bringing ourselves closer to mastery, we're going to start noticing the way in which those personal projects start to affect the way we behave in relationships, because they're absolutely related. What we do and the way that we treat ourselves is directly connected to how we show up in relationships and how we participate in relationships. So for example, the decision to take that, to do that first push-up, to take that first walk, to take that first Spanish class is really, a suggestion we're making to the universe, where we say that we deserve more, where we deserve to have something more, where we deserve to have a better life that is more aligned with what we want. We don't want to be someone who reads books. We decide we're going to be someone who reads more books. We don't want to be someone who works out. We're deciding we're going to work out. So whatever way that this expansion is happening for you, that is what we're going to experience in the Novile. We're going to see all these little subtle ways in which how we're behaving internally and the ways that we're changing ourselves is affecting our harmonious relationships, and in some really powerful and positive ways. So in the next video, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Novile, and then we're going to vote for what comes after. Jax, and this is going to be part 3 of the Novile discussion. And this particular Novile that's coming up, I think, is really important. The Novile between the Sun in Virgo and Venus in Libra. So part of the reason that this is so incredibly important is that if we're not making the decision to improve ourselves in some way, and not even just in a general sort of self-help sense, but the way in which we know that we can operate the best version of ourselves and the one that we want to bring not only, to ourselves, for ourselves, but also to bring to society, to bring to the collective, and to bring to the world in a greater sense. If we're refusing to take that first step into any type of self-improvement or any type of large change that we want to undertake, then it's going to show up in our relationships. And whether it shows up in the form of being in the wrong types of relationships, whether it shows up in the form of projecting different things onto other people because they are stepping into that light or they are stepping into that strength, it can be a very difficult thing. And when the energies don't match up, you can take the most harmonious relationships like Venus-Libra relationships, and they can become sour extremely fast. And so the power of this Novile and the power of understanding this particular one with the Sun in Virgo at Venus Libra is that what you're saying to the universe when you take whatever this self-improvement step is, when you take this first step in the goal, no matter how small it is you're taking your most valuable resources. You're taking your open source potential. You're taking the potential that you could spend in so many different areas of life, and you're taking your other most precious resource. You're taking your time, and you're giving these two sort of sacred coins to the universe, and in exchange it gives you a flower pot that is full of dirt and just a seed. And really, it's just discipline. That's what the universe gives back. It's like, here's discipline for what your sacred gift that you've given me. And at first, the seed is absolutely nothing. It doesn't, grow into a beautiful flower. It doesn't bear fruit. There's essentially no payoff at all in the beginning, except for maybe like a sense of feeling better that you're doing something. But part of us exploring that, part of us getting that flower pot and eventually watering that seed and eventually having it sprout up into a sacred, tree of abundance that spreads throughout the different areas of our life, that is something that directly affects how we are capable of having a relationship with ourselves and capable of having a relationship with other people. The way that we do or do not serve ourselves in the Virgo archetype is the way that we can or cannot help or serve another person. So I think it's really important to look into that and to keep an open mind about that as September 1st comes up. What do you want to change? What do you want to recognize? And what are you going to recognize if you start that change?